Here's a name I can say from the Eradicator.
Hello and welcome to this channel, everybody. This is the Eradicator, and today I am accompanied by actually Anachronism, who is actually one of our Patreons, so big member of our community, very active. Thank you so much for being here, Anachronism. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Eradicator. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Actually, you are my very first guest on the show, so this is quite an honor. I'm really glad that this is you. Anyway, back to our topic today. So today we are going to talk about something... hey, actually, I have the wrong script. Hold on, because this is a scripted video. This is actually quite a special one, the longest script I've ever done, by the way. So today we are going to have a little special video because I'm going to make a response video. This is something that I normally don't do, but here I am going to make an exception because there has been a latest addition to a series of video called actually Sun Cos Galaxy, from a so-called ex-investors who seems more like a disgruntled whale to me, which is, entirely dedicated to Chris Roberts' wife, Sandi Gardiner, a video which I would say is very well researched, backed with plenty of facts and evidence. And here, kudos to its author for spending the time to find as much elements as possible. However, the video solely focuses on elements such as nepotism or Sandi's obvious weaknesses when it comes to leading the marketing department for a multinational company, with a twist of gossiping as well, and some details on how the Chris Roberts Sandi Gardiner couple works. And I totally get why he made that. These facts resonate the most to backers who spend money hoping for the project they backed to come to fruition. And don't get me wrong here, it does resonate to me too. However, the biggest issue I have with this video is that this entire series, and actually the entire issue that I have with the entire series actually as a whole, is that it seems to be dealing in absolute as if it was created as a tool for revenge. Anak, have you watched this latest video?
I've only watched 10 minutes of the most recent video, which mostly seemed to me to be talking about Sandi, and the way it was done, describing her as furthering her career by going after Chris Roberts, and that's where I lost interest.
Oh, I see. So yeah, maybe you were turned off a little bit by the gossiping aspect, right? Okay.
Right. It felt like a gossip rag.
Well, sure, the author presents plain, hard facts, but the problem is that he illustrates them with visual elements aimed at further discrediting Chris and Sandi. And this is where I think he goes too far, because if you don't think clearly while listening to his carefully crafted argumentation, then it can be very easy to forge yourself a biased point of view and lean towards feeling the author obviously has because of his history with CIG and wants you to share, such as anger or, dare I say, hatred. And to me, it seems that this whole series, despite its apparent looks, which resembles more like a documentary, is to me a travesty fueled by negative feelings from a man who had false expectations and instead of owning his mistake, which was basically considering himself an investor, why he should have remained a backer, puts the blame on Chris and Sandi and is trying through this series to depict them under the worst light possible, only to fuel his ego so that he could, actually rejoice himself from hearing the same thing from other people. And I think that this is where I have a problem with this series. I mean, I accept the fact he presents, I acknowledge them, but I actually think that the whole series should have been done by an outsider, such as a journalist, for example, or someone neutral. And I think that in my eyes, it would have made this work more meaningful and would perhaps have covered some aspects of Chris and Sandi's perspective, which of course are not present in this series. And have you watched the other videos? Actually, I think you were yesterday in the game stream, and the games was mentioning this whole series. And the game seems that the latest video, the part 7 that you watched only 10 minutes, was actually the best of the series, because that's the video where he was the least biased. Have you watched these other videos, or is it something that you'd be interested in having a look, perhaps?
I feel an hour of what I saw would be too much, and I haven't seen the other videos. DG explained that this was the better one of the few, and so I have no desire to actually watch those previous ones if that's the case.
I see. And so your main concern is that perhaps the point of view of the author was, as you said, biased and maybe one-sided.
It's much like the Forbes article. The topic of your conversation gets lost if all you're doing is getting into the personal life and running these people down. If you're making a point later on in that video, you're going to lose me in the first 10 minutes, which is what happened.
I see. And so, well, you see here, that's what I think, and I'm totally joining you here. I think that there are always two sides in a story, and today we're not going to cover CIG's perspective of what happened between the author of the series and CIG, simply because, well, I personally don't have the elements, and frankly, I'm not interested. However, based on what I have seen over the past 7 years, I've backed Star Citizen. I think I can draw a psychological portrait of Chris Roberts, and based on my own experiences and my ability to empathize, I actually try to explain some of the decisions he made regarding his wife, Sandi Gardiner, since this is what this latest episode is all about. And again, I think that people often forget the human and also the psychological aspect of things, and I think that these specific aspects are equally important to the financial aspect. And I'm not trying to be a white knight or to defend Chris or Sandi at all costs. I just want to open people's mind and talk about things that we don't necessarily think about. Have you ever seen any videos dealing about the psychological aspect of things regarding how CIG is managed? I think this is a topic that's rarely talked about. I can't remember
I have
any.
seen some discussions on the topic, but not actual videos. It's quite evident that CIG make the most out of people's willingness to pay all this money for the game and the ships, and that's to be expected. I mean, they are making a lot of money out of this, and if they can further that's better for them.
But here we're actually going to talk about the psychological aspect that led Chris to make all of these decisions, hiring Sandi, even getting married with Sandi. We're going, because that's what this specific video was all about, but it does not cover the possible reasons, and this is what we're going to start here. So actually, one of the aspects of this video, this part 7, is how Chris and Sandi met. And here we are led to think that Sandi did everything she could do to date Chris because it would have helped her career, and that Chris only had to pick her up. And here I'm going to say, so what, right? Guys, let's imagine you are Chris in the mid-2000s for a while. You're a little bit, I'm not trying to attack Chris or whatever. I'm just trying to give facts here. Imagine you are Chris in the mid-2000s. You're a little bit chubby. You're not very attractive. You're quite awkward. That's Chris, and there's this attractive young lady who would do anything to make it, including getting in your bed. And what would you do? Of course, you would take that chance. That's how we guys are, especially if your career is declining and things are not doing so well, as we were comprehensively explained in the series. Chris must have thought that this was a godsend gift. And as far as Sandi goes, she must have thought that he could have helped her in her career and bring her some financial stability and the means to found a family, because this is a given, guy. This is what many women want by instinct. Men want attractive mates to produce offspring. Women want security to take care of the offspring. And this is what has been, I think, based on the information that we've been given by the author of this series, this is what has been happening between Chris and Sandi. And they got married, and they got 2 beautiful little girls together. And again, so what? So what? That's why I don't understand why this video, the author here made such a big deal about how they met and the circumstances and the whys, and just so what? This is just a typical example of how life goes. This is life. I'm sure you must have seen plenty of examples like that in real life too, and
nepotism is to be expected.
Yeah.
No one could have predicted. No one could have predicted how big CIG would have become, and it was only natural for Chris to give a position to his partner or friends and brother. I think most of us would do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, people forget that at the very beginning, when we had that presentation back in the days, with that big carrier and then the Kickstarter campaign, CIG only had 8 staff, including Sandi Gardiner, Chris's wife. Money was not coming in. At the beginning, Chris was spending his own money. He could not afford to hire people, absolute strangers. He had to get a close team of people that he knew. So absolutely, and we do see this type of nepotism in plenty of other companies. And not to mention that nobody back in 2012, nobody would have expected CIG to become the juggernaut, the huge popular success, the multinational company that it is today. No one could have predicted that CIG would eventually have 500 employees 7 years after. Anyway, my second point here is going to be the genesis of Star Citizen. And interestingly, this was certainly not the intention of the creator of this series, but actually, I believe that he did prove that without Sandi, there would have been no Star Citizen. Shocking, right? And here is why. The series extensively covers the life of Chris Roberts, especially between Freelancer and the start of Star Citizen. And here we learned that by the time Chris's Hollywood career was over, his financial situation was so bad that Sandi eventually urged him to contemplate the idea of getting an actual job. And I'm not joking, there's an actual audio proof in that series, in one of those videos. And again, I wanted to point out the minutiae of the research done here by the author. Again, there is nothing wrong here with Sandi urging Chris to man up and find ways to offer financial stability to the household, because guess what? If you are not married, let me tell you something. This is what wives do. Most wives do expect their husbands to be the breadwinner, or at least to contribute to a fair part of the household's income. And it is linked to the innate need for security mentioned earlier. This is just what they do. That's what wives do. Anak, how would your wife respond if you were in dire financial status?
I think we all go through the same troubles, no matter our relationships. There's always one person pushing the other, and that's part of a relationship.
Absolutely, and this is exactly what happened here. Chris eventually had I think if according to the series, he had a car rental, or he had like a car business in Hollywood, which also was not doing so well, and basically he was really in dire straits. Situation was quite bad, and we literally hear Sandi suggesting Chris to get a job, and of course this is not something that he sounded very excited about. Now, imagine you are Chris freaking Roberts, creator of the Wing Commander series, Starlancer, Freelancer, and despite your failures at Hollywood and the Freelancer debacle, you are still a legend in the video game industry. Are you going to get a damn job? Are you going to reduce yourself to taking orders from someone else while you are the man? And of course not. And that's why, there was that last project, that last chance, that eventually became Star Citizen. I think that Sandi rightfully hurt Chris's ego when she told him to get a job. I think that Sandi gave Chris the will to prove himself worthy of her by doing so, because we all know what happens when wives no longer admire their husbands, And I think that Sandi gave Chris the drive to create the one last project, the last chance, the last ride that would eventually become Star Citizen. And this is why I would go as far as saying that without Sandi, there would be no Star Citizen at all. And sure, Sandi is often antipathetic. Sure, Sandi doesn't know much about video games as a whole and is absolutely not the best person to be vice president of marketing. But as this series shows us, despite its negative narrative, without Sandi, there would be no Star Citizen. Anak, is this something you have ever thought about? First, if you don't agree with me, please be my guest. I would love to have any contradictory speeches here. I'm sure the viewers here would also love it if you know. But have you ever thought about this? Without Sandi, there would be no Star Citizen. Is this something that has ever crossed your mind?
It could be a possibility. We don't know which way we would go without these pushes in life from our partners. I think, he may have done it on his own. He may have needed some prodding. It may have been suggestions, but it just comes down to the fact that you're not going to fire your wife just because the business is growing. If it's growing, you're doing something right. And everybody wants to be an armchair expert, but so far, has anyone offered a better way to do things that is other than the typical suggestions we see every day on the forum?
Well, you're right. We don't know that, but that's me. I like to extrapolate. I like sometimes to exaggerate a little bit. But hey, it's just, let's just say that it's food for thought. But then you would say, but Rad, why has she been around for 7 years at this position? And what about Chris's brother Aaron? And you mentioned nepotism. You mentioned the fact that at the beginning the company was very small. They needed a small team to run this together. And isn't this nepotism? Well, hasn't this hurt the project more than anything else? And these are absolutely legitimate questions. And judging by everything I've seen over the past 7 years, including what was revealed in this series, I would tend to say that it was. I think that by now we are all aware of how mismanaged CIG has been since the beginning. However, again here, I am urging people to try to understand the psychology behind these events. I'm not saying that those are excuses. I am merely trying to explain how things are from, again, a human perspective, not from a money perspective. And you see, Chris is a very passionate man, and like most passionate men, he is driven by his passion, which are, again, as revealed by this series, video games, of course, Hollywood, cars, and this is something that we have seen in Star Citizen with the way ships are made and designed and sold. And also, I would say he's also passionate by his wife. And I'm not trying to be cheesy here, even though I know it does sound very cheesy. But as I said earlier, for a guy like Chris, Sandi is like the best partner he could have ever dreamed of having. She's smart, she's ambitious, she's beautiful, she gave him 2 beautiful kids. And I understand Chris because I am myself an average looking guy and I am short, which doesn't help with girls. And yet I too found a wife which is quite similar to Sandi, actually. And guess what? I am very passionate about her, and there's absolutely nothing that I wouldn't do for her, and I feel better when she's around, which is probably how Chris feels too. And this might be the reason why she has been around since the start. And as Anak just said here, and thank you for your thoughts here, Anak, you just don't fire your wife, right? So Chris, as shown in this series, is not just a passionate man, he is also sensitive and emotional. And yes, he does need his wife and his brother to be around him in order to stay motivated and emotionally driven to keep the project going. It is the presence of those people who are dear to him that keep him going, at the price of maybe efficiency, sometimes talent morale, and maybe proper decision making. But nevertheless, in the end, had Sandi and Erin not been here, I repeat, I fundamentally believe that there would have been no Star Citizen. And as far as I'm concerned, I prefer a late, expensive, and ill-conceived Star Citizen than no Star Citizen at all. And let's just forget about a properly managed Star Citizen, because with Chris Roberts, that's just not possible. Let's just accept this. Anak, do you think that Chris Roberts on his own is actually capable of managing a project properly, based on previous history and previous experiences we've seen in the past?
That's a very hard one to answer. Look, the project is slow, but it's working as it is right now. I don't know whether we would want a cold calculating corporate figure managing everything. If we ran the business like EA runs, we would have had this half-finished released game with barely any features and countless DLCs by now. But if you're running a game yourself, you're going to want to do things differently, and this is probably good for us, even if it takes twice as long.
I think that's a very interesting point. Yeah, so there we have it, guys. The reasons why I have a problem with this particular series, despite, again, being backed by solid, hard evidence and fact. And it is I think that it is driven by hard feelings generated by a poorly made choice the other can't accept he made. I believe he should never have considered himself an investor and should not have crossed the line between backing the game and expecting to have any other return than having the game at some point. And when we have when we, the backers, decided to go straight to what I call Star Citizen 2, basically, and I personally voted for that too, I think that he should have just taken his money back, which he did, and coped with the fact that he made a poor decision by investing too much. And he's not the only one. There are other people out there, equally disgruntled people who only talk about how terrible Chris and Sandy are, yet they are completely discarding the human aspect of things. They completely focus on their point of view, their own experience, without having any form of empathy for the human beings who are actually making this dream project a reality, despite the mismanagements, despite the delays, despite the setbacks. And just like Spectrum White Knights, who are not helping the project by saying everything CIG does is fantastic, I believe that people such as the author of this series or a few YouTube content creators are doing is equally wrong, because their aim is not to be balanced and constructive, but solely to hurt due to their desire for personal revenge. And that, I believe, is just not right. And that's it for this video, Anak. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated your presence and your insight. It was awesome to have someone in the show. I know that a lot of people will not agree with what I said, but that's okay. That's okay. Please stay civil and respectful in the comments down below. Don't forget to check out our Patreon page. This month we have a Patreon exclusive giveaway. I'm offering the very last Tomb Ranger CB with lifetime insurance. Yeah, everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys next time. This is The Eradicator. I am signing out.